This happened a few months ago when I moved to this small town. I'm a therapist, and I thought leaving the city would help me reconnect with nature. The old farmhouse at the end of a gravel road looked charming at first. Honestly, it was surprisingly isolated. My nearest neighbor was a mile away. At first, I found the quiet comforting, but I quickly learned that the storms here are something else. The first time the storm hit, it was a typical evening. I was curled up with a book when the thunder started rumbling. I set my mug down and tried to ignore the flashes of lightning. The winds picked up, and I heard a tapping sound near the window. I assumed it was just branches moving in the wind. The sound was rhythmic, like something was trying to get my attention, but I brushed it off. I thought it was just my imagination or the storm messing with my head. The next storm was worse. I had just settled in for the night. The cracks of thunder rattled my windows as rain came pouring down. In the midst of it, I noticed something dart past my window, a shadow way too quick to catch. My heart raced, but I felt an odd mix of fear and curiosity. It didn't feel like my imagination this time. I decided to distract myself with some music, hoping it would drown out the unsettling sounds. Lightning lit up the room, showing the corners for a brief moment. Then I heard it again, whispers. I could have sworn I heard murmurs during the flashes, but I couldn't make out any words. A cold chill ran down my spine. Maybe it was just the wind, I thought, wrapping the blanket around myself tighter. The storms kept coming, and so did these eerie moments. One night, I swore I felt watched. I glanced toward the window. The rain poured heavily, but I couldn't shake the feeling something was on the other side, waiting. My heart pounded. I never saw anything, but I sensed a presence lingering just out of sight. It wasn't right. I couldn't explain it. I've never believed in ghosts or anything, but these nights left me questioning my sanity. Perhaps it was the stress of starting over. Yet as the storms rolled in, I wondered if something really lurked in the darkness. I took a deep breath, trying to shake it off, but I couldn't escape the thought. As the winds howled outside, I saw movement again. Then, just like before, everything went silent. My heart raced. I was left sitting there, wondering if it was real or just in my head. I tried to stay calm, telling myself I was just tired. But each flash of lightning revealed nothing. That night, I decided to get some sleep. I pulled the covers tight around me, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept imagining someone standing in the rain, face pressed against my window, waiting for me. I kept looking, but the only thing outside was dark. Days went by, and the storms never ceased. Every clap of thunder filled me with dread. I didn't want to be alone in the house anymore. I began to avoid quiet evenings, but they just kept coming. Now, every storm feels heavy with something unspoken, and I can't shake off the feeling that I'm not alone. It haunts me, always there, always watching. What do I do when the next storm hits? Am I safe in this lonely farmhouse? The sky turned dark again, filling with ominous clouds. I felt the tension in the air before the first rumble of thunder struck. I had hoped for a quiet evening, but as I stared out at the horizon, anxiety curled in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Determined to distract myself, I decided to tidy up the house. I thought focusing on something mundane might help. I moved from room to room, rearranging furniture, and wiping down surfaces. But the storm outside grew louder. Each crack of thunder pulled my attention back to the window. The trees bent and swayed with fierce winds. I was in the kitchen when I heard a soft whisper, barely audible over the rain. My heart raced again. I froze, straining to listen. It wasn't just the wind, it felt deliberate. I moved cautiously toward the living room, peeking through the drapes, half expecting to see a figure lurking in the storm. But there was nothing, just rain. Trying to calm myself, I grabbed a mug and made tea. While waiting for the kettle to whistle, I glanced at the window again. This time, I forced myself to search for movement. My breath caught as something small darted across my peripheral vision. I whipped my head toward the window, ready to confront whatever I thought I'd see. But again, just shadows and falling rain. With each passing minute, the storm intensified. I took my tea to the living room and tried to immerse myself in a mindless TV show. But the whispers returned, clearer now. It felt as if someone was calling to me, just out of reach. I glanced at the window. It was dark and the trees swayed wildly, but I felt drawn to the storm. What if I went outside? The thought made my skin crawl. I shook my head, telling myself it was foolish. Running from the storm felt impossible, but what if I didn't have to face it alone? I grabbed my phone, thinking of calling my neighbor. She was older, and maybe she would understand. Just as I was about to dial, the lights flickered. I cursed under my breath, biting my lip. The sounds of the storm drowned out my thoughts. I could barely concentrate. As I waited for the lights to steady, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. In the reflection of the darkened window, I saw a figure. It was just a shadow, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was real. My pulse quickened. I had to be imagining things. I turned to face the window fully, my heart thudding. Suddenly, as if on cue, the lights went out. I stumbled back, feeling the wall for balance. Panic set in. The whispers grew louder, as if a crowd was speaking just outside, nosing around my home. The only source of light came from the occasional flash of lightning. That's when I saw it. Through the rain-smeared glass, a face, pale and gaunt, pressed directly against the window. I gasped, stumbling backward into the dark room, my breath catching in my throat. The whispers escalated, filling me with dread. Someone was there, and they weren't going away. I needed to confront this darkness or risk becoming part of it. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, my heart racing. The face I had seen was gone now, but I could still feel its presence lingering around me. I turned, scanning the darkness, every shadow stretching into ominous shapes that made my skin crawl. The whispers faded momentarily, replaced by the sound of my own breathing. I needed to gather myself. With no lights, I had to feel my way back to the kitchen. There was a flashlight in a drawer, a small beacon of hope in this suffocating darkness. I stumbled through, avoiding the coffee table, and finally reached the drawer. After rummaging through some utensils, I found the flashlight and flicked it on. The beam cut through the shadows, illuminating the room. I felt slightly less vulnerable but could still feel an unsettling weight in the air. The whispers returned, more insistent now. It was as if they were coming from inside the walls, echoing around me. I focused, trying to make sense of the muffled sounds. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder shook the house, and the lights flickered back to life for a brief moment. My breath caught at the sight. Just beyond the window stood a silhouette, not the gaunt face I had seen before, but a different form, tall and menacing, like a shadow already blending into the storm. As the lights died again, I pointed my flashlight toward the figure, but the beam cast a thin glow on nothing but the empty yard. I struggled to control my fear. Maybe it was the storm playing tricks on me. Maybe I wanted to see something in the shadows. But the doubts nagged at the edges of my mind. I felt compelled to check outside, but I was terrified of what I might find. I tiptoed to the window, flashlight in hand. I peered out, heart pounding. The rain blinded me. I scanned the yard frantically, but everything was just a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. A sudden urge gripped me to pull the curtain shut, to shield myself from whatever lingered outside. But I resisted, wanting to be sure. Just then, I spotted movement near the edge of the woods behind my house. Something shifted between the trees. My breath hitched, and the whispers swelled, now sounding like urgent pleas. It felt like an invitation, a sinister lure pulling me closer to the dark. I took a step back, clenching the flashlight as if it could fend off whatever was out there. That s when I noticed something lying on the ground at the base of the window, something white, partially hidden by the wet grass. My heart raced as I leaned down, flashlight beam shaking as I reached out to grasp it. As I picked it up, I realized it was a torn piece of fabric, a small, white handkerchief, stained with dark smudges. The whispers surged again, a cacophony rising to a climax. There was a name stitched into the corner, one that sent chills down my spine. With my stomach in knots, I clutched the piece of fabric tightly. I didn't know how it got there or what it meant, but I knew I was no longer alone in this storm. The handkerchief felt cold and damp in my grip, the dark stain seeping into my palm. I took a deep breath, trying to keep panic at bay. I turned back to the window, half expecting the silhouette to reappear. Nothing but rain and darkness met my eyes now. I scanned the yard anxiously, but the unease twisted in my stomach like a coiling snake. The whispers grew louder. Each syllable was a hollow echo, frantic and desperate. It was hard to decipher what they meant, but it felt urgent, like a warning wrapped in fear. I needed to know what was happening. I needed answers, no matter how unsettling they might be. I decided to sweep the flashlight across the yard again. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding so small against the wind and rain. I didn't expect an answer, but silence hung heavily in the air, weighing on me like the promise of something lurking just out of sight. With a shaky exhale, I stepped back from the window and scanned the room, searching for something, anything that might explain the handkerchief. I shuffled over to the kitchen table, illuminated by the flashlight's beam. Papers were scattered everywhere, remnants of a life that now felt distant. Then, I spotted my notebook. An idea flickered, perhaps there was something I had written during stormy nights like this. I flipped through the pages, skimming random thoughts, but they were mostly mundane reflections or half-formed dreams. Until I reached a page that caught my breath. A drawing of a figure, a girl, her face obscured except for her wide, hollow eyes that mirrored the shadow I had seen. Below it, scrawled in my own handwriting, were the words, "She always comes back." My mind raced. Who was she? Was this just a figment of my imagination? Another thunderclap shook the house, louder this time, and I nearly dropped the flashlight. A flash of lightning illuminated a corner of the room, and I gasped in spite of myself. There, behind the couch, was the same handkerchief I now held. I blinked, trying to process the sight. Had I missed it before? Had it been tucked back behind the furniture? With trembling hands, I picked it up. It was identical, the same stains, the same name stitched in. My heart slammed against my chest. This couldn't be a coincidence. I could feel it, the air thickened, swirling around me with a palpable tension. As I stood there, holding the two handkerchiefs like some chilling trophy, I heard a faint noise behind me, soft footfalls on the wooden floor. My breath hitched, and I spun around, flashlight aimed into the abyss of shadows. "Who is there?" I demanded, my voice shaking as I peered into the darkness. The flashlight beam trembled as the sound shifted, the whispers crescendoing, now sounding like a chant. I backed away toward the door, my heart pounding, my mind racing with possibilities. Then everything went dark. The darkness swallowed me whole. My fingers fumbled for the flashlight switch, but it felt too clumsy to handle. I could still hear the whispers, an unending murmur that clawed at the edges of my sanity. I took a slow step back, my other senses kicking in. The air was colder now, a chilling breeze wrapping around me like fingers. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I had to move. I couldn't just stand in the pitch black. I stumbled toward where I thought the hallway was. My foot caught on something, and I fell forward into a wall. Pain shot through my shoulder, but I grit my teeth and pushed off it. I needed to find a way out, or at least more light. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Then, a flicker. Just a small spark of light in the corner of the room. Hell no, it couldn't be real. I squinted, straining my eyes against the darkness. The glow pulsed gently, illuminating the outline of a figure. My breath caught in my throat as I froze. I recognized the shape. It was the girl from my drawing. Her eyes glowed unnaturally in the dim light. I blinked hard, adrenaline racing through my veins. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the buzz of my heartbeat. The figure shifted closer, and the soft footfalls returned, echoing eerily in the dark. She didn't speak, but her presence felt heavy, oppressive. It was as if she carried the burden of unspoken words. Then, almost as if sensing my fear, she raised a hand. An outstretched finger pointed directly at the handkerchief still clenched in my grip. I glanced down, the realization washing over me like cold water. That's when I saw it, the third handkerchief, lying just a few feet away, tucked half under the old armchair. I hesitated only a moment before scrambling for it. As soon as my fingers closed around the fabric, a shock coursed through me. The light flickered again, illuminating the delicate stitching, a name, yet another name sewn into the cloth, Amelia. A rush of memories surged. I had heard that name before. It was the little girl who went missing a decade ago from our town. Everyone had searched, but her case went cold. My heart raced as dread settled in. Had I somehow summoned her? Was this why the whispers had been so urgent? I turned back to face her, but she was gone. I only had the darkness now and the unyielding weight of dread hanging around me. As I knelt there, heart hammering in my chest, I began to piece together what this all meant. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut hard. The sound echoed like thunder in the dark. Someone was in the house. I couldn't breathe. My eyes darted around, frantically searching the shadows. The slamming door felt like a death knell. The air thickened, suffocating me. I pushed myself back up, ready to move, to run anywhere but here. The whispers returned, louder this time, swirling around me like a malevolent wind. They filled my ears with a cacophony of uncertainty. "Get out. Run," they seemed to say. I took a step toward the room door, and my feet felt glued to the floor as panic seized me. I needed a plan. I glanced at the windows. Thick curtains hung like dark sentinels, blocking any hint of what was outside. And yet, that was my only escape. I turned to the one closest to me, ready to yank it aside, but the chilling atmosphere made me hesitate. Another noise sliced through my thoughts, a soft thud, followed by a scuffling sound from the hallway. My stomach twisted as I pressed my back to the wall, the fabric of the handkerchief crumpling in my fist. Whatever it was coming closer. The dim light flickered again, and I caught a glimpse of something, just a flash. It looked like a shadow flitting past the open hallway door, too quick to identify. My heart pounded louder, drowning out the whispers. I couldn't wait any longer. I bolted toward the window, tugging at the curtain. It was stubborn, as if it wanted to keep me inside. With a hard yank, the fabric finally released. I flung the curtain aside and peered outside. The night was alive with distant flashing lightning, illuminating the yard for a heartbeat before plunging it back into darkness. Then I saw her standing in the middle of the yard. Pale and almost translucent, Amelia's image shone in the flashes of lightning. Her eyes locked onto mine, and fear gripped me. How was she here? Everything inside me screamed to retreat, but just then, the scuffling noise escalated to footfalls in the hallway, and I was paralyzed. She pointed to something behind me, her mouth moving, but no sound reached me. It felt urgent. "What?" I called out, my voice cracking in the still air. I turned my head. A shadow loomed in the doorway, growing more solid. My body wanted to run, but I was frozen, staring into the darkness that now had a shape, a tall figure stepping into view. Before I could make sense of it, the figure lunged forward. Instinct kicked in, and I dove toward the window, heart racing. I crashed into the frame, desperately clawing at the latch. Whatever this thing was, I had no intention of finding out. It was now or never. I flung the window open, shards of glass rained down as the figure lunged toward me. I scrambled out and hit the ground hard, the cool earth barely cushioning my fall. I rolled over just in time to see Amelia standing by the edge of the yard, her expression pleading, as if begging me to follow. The house loomed behind me, and the whispers roared like a storm. I had to make a choice. Either follow the girl who was gone too soon or face whatever was left behind. I took a deep breath and began to run. I had no idea what awaited me in the darkness, but something told me this was only the beginning. The ground felt uneven beneath my feet as I sprinted toward Amelia. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to turn back. But the more I ran, the more freedom surged through me. The night air was laced with the scent of wet earth and a hint of rust from the distant storm. I focused on her form ahead. "Amelia!" I shouted, but the wind swallowed my voice. She glanced back, just for a moment, her eyes wide, urging me to hurry. It was like she was tethered to something behind her, invisible but palpable. I stumbled as I tried to keep pace. The shadows around me twisted, and each flash of lightning seemed to stretch the moment into eternity. I felt the weight of the house press against my back, its dark secrets beckoning me to return. But whatever fate awaited me inside was worse than the unknown. "Come on," she mouthed again, pointing toward the tree line at the edge of the yard. I followed her gaze, my heart pounding with uncertainty. What lay beyond those trees? Safety? Or more danger? But then I heard it, the unmistakable thudding noise from the house, getting louder. It was like a heartbeat, echoing through the fear-soaked night, quickening in tempo. I stopped in my tracks, glancing back. The front door stood ajar, and the shape of that tall figure re-emerged in the doorway. I was frozen, my breath caught in my throat. Amelia took a few hurried steps toward the trees, and finally, fear broke my paralysis. I tore my gaze away from the figure and sprinted toward her. "Wait!" The thunder rumbled overhead, drowning out the sound of my footsteps as I reached her. We were at the edge of the yard now. "What do we do?" I gasped, my chest heaving. She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the thick underbrush, a path neither of us could have seen before. My mind raced. I wanted to know what was happening, why she was here. But I could feel the urgency in her presence, like a string pulling me forward. Just as we stepped into the shadows of the trees, a scream pierced the night. Not a scream of terror, but one of pure rage. I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end. It was loud and primal. Whoever or whatever was inside the house was angry. "Run!" I urged Amelia, and we plunged deeper into the woods, heartbeats matching the rhythm of the storm above. We stumbled through the foliage, limbs scratching at our skin. I could hear the whispers again, echoing louder with each step, wild and frantic. "This way!" Amelia stopped abruptly. I nearly collided into her. She held up a finger to her lips, shushing me. My heart raced as I strained to listen. Something moved in the darkness behind us, a low growl vibrating in the air. "What was that?" I whispered, fear creeping back in as I scanned the dark trees. A flash of movement caught my eye. I turned just in time to see a figure emerge from the shadows, a shape unmistakably similar to the one from the house. Panic washed over me. "We need to go now." But as we turned to run again, the path shifted underfoot. That's when I saw it, a faint glow between the trees. It pulsed in and out, like a heartbeat, an unsettling invitation. What was calling me deeper into the woods? I hesitated, gripped by the conflicting urges to flee and to understand. Amelia caught my eye, her expression torn between dread and the inexplicable pull of light. And then it flickered out altogether. Everything went dark. I stood still, enveloped in darkness, unsure of where to move next. The silence around us felt oppressive, every sound muted. I turned to look at Amelia, desperate to see her face, to gauge her reaction. But I found only shadows. I felt lost in a void, and instinctively, I reached out, trying to find her. "Amelia?" My voice trembled, uncertain if she would respond. She materialized beside me, her breath ragged as fear mirrored my own. What was that light? She whispered, her voice barely more than a breath, as if speaking too loudly might draw attention. It felt strange. I don't know, I confessed. My mind raced with the possibilities. What was hidden in the wood that drew us in? I thought about the figure that had stood in the doorway of the house, its presence looming over us like an unfinished chapter. But we can't stay here. We have to keep moving. With renewed urgency, we pressed forward into the trees, our footsteps soft against the damp ground. But the forest was thicker here, branches grasping at us like fingers, pulling at our clothes. I felt the pulse of my heartbeat in my throat, mixing with the distant rumble of thunder. Suddenly, the growl from before cut through the silence again, sharper and closer. Instinct kicked in, and I began to quicken my pace. This way. We have to, but before I could finish, I stumbled on the roots of a tree, falling against the ground. Are you okay? Amelia was beside me instantly, her eyes wild with concern. I'm fine, I gasped, pushing myself up. But as I looked past her, I caught another glimpse of movement, a flash of fur and the silhouette of what looked like a large, animal-like creature darting just out of sight. My stomach twisted with panic. Did you see that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, fear painting her features. What was it? Before I could answer, I heard a cracking noise nearby, as if something was snapping twigs beneath heavy weight. My heart raced again. We have to. A shrill scream pierced the night again, this time cutting through the forest like a knife. It was joined by the sounds of quick, heavy footfalls, racing towards us from behind. Run! I shouted, and we took off deeper into the trees, adrenaline fueling us. The darkness closed in, our only guide the sporadic flashes of lightning illuminating our path. Just then, we broke into a small clearing, bathed in the eerie glow of moonlight. Ahead, a massive tree stood, its gnarled roots twisting like a warping hand. A soft light flickered at its base, forcing me to stop. That light again, Amelia breathed, enchanted by its glow, even as her fear was palpable. The storm raged overhead, but the glow felt warm, inviting. I hesitated, debating the risk of stepping closer. That's when I noticed something strange, a small charm dangling from a branch, glinting in the soft light. What is that? I mumbled, pointing it out. Before Amelia could respond, a shadow flickered behind us, the growling sound returning, feral and furious. The charm vibrated softly, and a deep instinct told me it wasn't just an object. Something about it felt alive. Grab it. It might help us. I yelled to Amelia. But as she reached for it, a harsh sound echoed through the clearing. I turned just in time to see the shape from the house emerge from the shadows, its eyes locked onto us, glimmering with intent. We were cornered in that moment, trapped between the darkness behind us and the bright but mysterious glow before us. I felt the impending dread crash down around us like the storm above. Now what? I whispered, my pulse racing as the shadow approached. The shadow lingered in the clearing, its form shifting and expanding like dark smoke, blocking out the moonlight. I felt Amelia's hand squeeze mine, her fear bleeding into my skin. I focused on that glow, the charm, that small beacon of hope. Keep an eye on that, I whispered to Amelia. I'm going to. Before I could finish, the low growl morphed into a snarl, raw and primal. The creature lunged forward, powerful and fast, its teeth glinting in the faint light. I threw myself sideways to put distance between the beast and us, dragging Amelia with me. Now! I shouted as we both darted toward the charm, my instincts screaming at me to reach for it. The creature crashed through the underbrush, snapping branches and scattering leaves. Amelia reached for the charm, her fingers closing around it just as the beast lunged again. The moment she touched it, a pulse of energy surged through the air, warm and electric. The light expanded, a radiant glow that pushed back the shadows, creating a barrier between us and the creature. What is this? She gasped, stunned as she held the charm tightly. The glow intensified, filling the clearing with a luminescent aura. I felt an odd sense of calm wash over me, the panic fading slightly. "I think it's protecting us," I said, amazed. But the creature was undeterred. It stopped just outside the perimeter of the light, its eyes squinting against the brightness while it paced like a predator searching for a way around. I could see now that it was larger than I first thought, its fur bristling, muscles coiling as it waited. It seemed to know it was held at bay, but it wasn't giving up. "Do you think it's afraid of the light?" Amelia wondered, her voice shaky. I nodded but couldn't shake the feeling that the charm could just as easily fail us. "We can't let it touch us. If it gets inside the glow." Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the scene for a brief second. I could see the creature's full form, a grotesque mix of beast and shadow, filled with an unnatural energy. "Can you let go of the charm?" I asked, scanning the area for any escape routes. "We might need to move." Amelia hesitated, glancing from the charm to the creature. "I don't know if I can. It feels connected to me." The growl turned into a low, guttural rumble, frustrated and angry. The creature leapt forward, trying to bridge the gap, but the glow flared, pushing it back as if it were repelled by the charm's magic. "Maybe it senses something in you," I said, urgency creeping into my voice. "It might want that charm for a reason." "In that case, we can't keep it," Amelia said, determination flickering behind her fear. "Maybe we can distract it." She stepped back deeper into the glow, raising the charm like a weapon. "I'll make it think I want to keep it," and then I shook my head. "No. That's too dangerous. We can't risk you getting caught." But her mind was made up. "It's our only chance. Trust me." Before I could argue, she tossed the charm into the darkness, where it landed with a soft thud. The creature's eyes widened, and it lunged after the glinting object, leaving the safety of the glow. "Now!" I cried, grabbing Amelia's arm as we sprinted toward the edge of the clearing. We raced through the trees, hearing the frustrated growl echo behind us. Glimpses of the creature darting in our peripheral vision reminded me how close we still were to danger. And then, as we broke through the underbrush, we came to an abrupt stop. What lay ahead made my heart drop. It was another clearing. But this one held a dark shape. An old stone altar, surrounded by forgotten markings and inscribed symbols. "Where are we?" Amelia whispered, scanning the unsettling sight. In that moment, I understood. We've stumbled into something ancient. But before I could process more, the growl returned, closer than ever. I turned, and the creature reappeared, eyes glowing with a fierce hunger, heading straight for us. We were trapped again, surrounded by unknown forces and with nowhere else to run. The beast loomed before us, its silhouette still cloaked in shadow but undeniably fearsome. I could feel the vibrations of its growl reverberating through the air, mixing with the distant thunder that crashed above. My heart thundered in my chest as I gripped Amelia's arm tightly, searching for an escape route. But we were caught in a spiraling darkness, trapped in the unnatural space that seemed to amplify my fears. The altar stood resolute before us, a relic of forgotten rituals echoing something ancient and sinister. "What do we do?" I whispered, my voice trembling against the backdrop of chaos. Amelia's gaze drifted toward the altar, her face twisting in concentration. "We have to find a way to use the altar," she said, her voice laced with resolve. "It feels powerful. But my instincts clamored against it. What if it's a trap? What if it's better than standing here?" She shot back, edging closer to the altar. I felt the urgency of her words, but a cold dread gripped me. What if whatever force dwelled within this darkness was too much for us to face? Clenching my fists, I followed her. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the jagged stones etched with symbols. As we reached the altar, I noticed something glinting in the center, a small bowl-like indentation filled with rainwater. "The charm," Amelia whispered, her eyes locked onto it. It needs to be there. Are you sure? I hesitated, fear swirling in my stomach like a tempest. We don't know what it'll do. We don't have time to debate. She insisted, pulling at my sleeve. The growl behind us grew louder, echoing our looming deadline. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, but Amelia was right, we needed to act. In a sudden rush of desperation, I reached for the charm, which still pulsed slightly in her hand. Do you think it'll protect us? I don't know, she said nervously. But it's our best shot. She took a deep breath, lifted the charm over the altar, and let it slide from her fingers into the shallow water. As it plunged in, a rush of energy swept through the air, a shimmer of power igniting around us. The beast paused, stunned by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Its growl faded into a low whimper, a noticeable retreat from the harshness it had exuded moments earlier. The markings on the altar glowed a vivid blue, pulsing in rhythm with the charm in the water. A wave of energy surged through us as the whispering returned, this time clearer and more melodic. It was an invitation, urging us forward, and I felt a part of me stir awake. Amelia! I gasped, turning to her. Do you feel that? Yes, she breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. It's like it's alive. I didn't understand what this moment meant, but the altar hummed with power, and the shadows that had plagued us began to dissolve like mist in the sun. The creature warily edged back, the glow from the altar seeming to consume the shadows it fed on. As the light expanded, cradled in the rain-swept darkness, I glanced back at the creature. It hesitated, letting out an anguished roar as the glow pressed even closer, reclaiming its hold on the night. Let us go! I shouted, grabbing Amelia's arm again. We turned to run deeper into the woods, knowing that the heartbeat of the altar would guide us toward safety. But as we navigated through the trees, houses mere memories behind us, the echoes of the past reverberated around us. Amelia paused, the glow of the altar still pulsing in her memory. What do we do if it follows us? She gasped, fatigue etched into her face. I shook my head, unsure. We don't know what it is or why it was after you. But whatever it wants, we have to be ready. The storm faded into the distance, the whispers softening, though the weight of the night remained heavy. What does it mean? I murmured, uncertainty wrapping around me like the damp air of the woods. I wish I knew, Amelia said, brushing strands of hair from her face. But those names, the handkerchiefs. They mean something, don't they? We might never know. Just then, a figure appeared at the tree line behind us. I spun around, defense instinct kicking in, as I realized it was just a shadow. Is it over? I asked, more to reassure myself than to seek an answer. I don't know, she replied, voice shaky. Part of me thinks it's never really over. Just different. We shared a lingering look, the world still shifting around us. Shadows crept back toward the altar. The pressure was still in the air, an unanswered question not yet released. I turned my gaze back to the dark path ahead. Let us keep moving then, I said, forging on into the unknown. Even as night fell heavier around us, I knew we had survived whatever darkness lay behind. But the deeper questions remained, fluttering in the hazy edges of the mind, a haunting reminder of what we might never understand. And maybe that was the true nature of this unsettling journey. As we walked, hand in hand into the depths of the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that the lingering shadows, balanced between the unseen and the known, would always be just behind us.